Welcome in, everybody, to the Flagship Podcast. It is Alamo Bowl week. It's game week. I am Chip Brown of Horns247.com, joined as always by the managing editor of Horns247, Taylor Estes. Taylor, Merry Christmas. How was your Christmas?
Merry Christmas. Yeah, it was pretty good. My parents actually came in for Christmas, which was the first time ever, and now they're stranded in Austin because of the airline issues that have happened across the country. So they will. I'm in San Antonio now. They will be at my house until January 1st now, when they're supposed to leave on Tuesday, which is today, December 27th. So, other than
Ah,
that, it's been great. How was yours?
no complaints. Family's good. Everybody got some presents, but more importantly, I think everybody's thankful that we got another year to celebrate a Christmas. So hope everyone listening had a great holiday. And I know, Taylor, for Texas Longhorns fans, that will be influenced possibly by Thursday night's Alamo Bowl game. And we're here in San Antonio. It's been interesting because both of these teams sound motivated. Washington, as the 10-win team on a 6-game winning streak, which included a really impressive 37-34 win at Oregon, come from behind win led by their Heisman finalist worthy quarterback, Michael Penix Jr. Um, they feel slighted because they're the underdog in this game and they're the 10-win team. We've heard this before, right?
Yeah.
TCU was the underdog. I mean, it goes on and on. But Texas also sounds motivated because they want to end the season on a high note, especially the Texas offense. The Texas defense sounds as confident as ever, even without DeMarvion Overshown. The Texas offense, however, will be without Bijan Robinson and Roschon Johnson, two of their stalwarts on offense and key team leaders. And that puts Quinn Ewers right there in that leadership role. And he's a guy who had an up and down regular season, Taylor.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, he's definitely going to need to step up because he is probably going to have to rely a little bit more on his arm. But I think the one probably blessing in disguise a little bit, Chip, for Texas going into this game is that with Bijan Robinson, Roschon Johnson being out, obviously that's going to be a massive loss, but they were not going to be returning anyway. And so now Jonathan Brooks and Jaden Blue get an opportunity to really step up and prepare, and Keelan Robinson too, and prepare to be the number one, number two, number three, type of back without the two kind of ringleaders of that room. And so I think that while yes, like Quinn Ewers has definitely got to step up from a leadership perspective, without those guys that have just been massive leaders, they'll still be on the sideline. But I really think this presents, a very prime opportunity for some of these younger guys to really get in a lot of the work that they haven't really had the opportunity to get in, being, the third, fourth, fifth string type of running backs. And in talking to to Kyle Flood and the offensive players this week leading up to the Alamo Bowl, it really sounds like things have clicked a little bit for these guys. And so I think it's going to be really interesting to kind of see how Jonathan Brooks, how Jadon Blue, how Keelan Robinson really take over from being, from definitely down on the depth chart to actually being the go-to guy, Chip.
Yeah, and I think it's going to be fascinating to see how much Steve Sarkisian trusts Jonathan Brooks, Keelan Robinson, and Jaden Blue in the running game. We know Sark had a propensity to go away from the running game, even with Bijan Robinson and Roschon Johnson in the backfield. I think, in a couple of games where Sark regrets it. So does he trust Jonathan Brooks? I do. I'd love to see 15 to 20 carries from Jonathan Brooks in this game. I think he's a special talent, and we
Mhm.
just need to give him a chance and see for ourselves. This is a Washington defense that has been a little bit inconsistent, but for the most part has been strong. 127 yards rushing per game. That is, I mean, Texas has given up 123 yards rushing, and we think of the Texas defense as, having played some lights out football here, especially down the stretch of the season. But Texas may lead the nation in quarterback pressures, but Washington has 35 sacks. Texas has 27. Washington averages almost 3 sacks a game, and that's kind of their forte. If they can get you into a one-dimensional game, they get to the quarterback. And so, Sark's going to, if he's going to throw the ball a lot, he's going to need to be really successful throwing the ball on first down. Otherwise, this could be a troubling night for Texas unless Sark is willing to give Jonathan Brooks, some carries and see what he can do. See if he can establish the run early in this game, because I think it's a big game for Quinn Ewers' confidence. He's had 15 bowl practices, Taylor. That's an entire spring football. There should be notable growth. He should be comfortable. The mechanics should be cleaned up. 15 practices is a ton, and that's why these bowl games are so valuable.
Yeah, and that's something that Texas did not have last season. And I think you're spot on when you talk about, Quinn Ewers and him being one of the guys that really could have benefited. And you want to see it though on the field, I think. And I will say one thing with Quinn Ewers, obviously the final stretch of the season were probably some games that he'd like to have back and some performances in that stretch that he would like to have had back. But I still kind of go back to when he was self-evaluating himself later on in the regular season, and he acknowledged, he's got to clean up his footwork. He's got to work on that. And what Steve Sarkisian, the way he approaches the bowl practices is kind of almost like the start at the very beginning, at least kind of like the start of spring ball, is getting back to the basics, getting back to the fundamentals, working on the fundamentals, working on the techniques. And Kyle Flood on Tuesday was talking a lot about that from the offense as a whole. And I really think that he can benefit substantially from that. But at the end of the day, you want to see it a little bit cleaner. And that may be an unfair thing to probably put on him, considering the two most valuable offensive playmakers and producers for the offense this season will not be on the field.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be Quinn Ewers talked a lot today about the mental toughness required to play quarterback at Texas. And he's been through the ups. He's been through the downs. We've talked about this before here on the Flagship Podcast. He's never been part of the problem like he was this year in the games against Oklahoma State, TCU, where and the TCU game certainly was a universally bad night for the entire offense. Dropped passes, missed blocking assignments, penalties. So, Quinn Ewers has had some high highs. Oklahoma, he talked about that. He talked about how after the Oklahoma State loss, he realized I got to really, really get into these defenses and learn every sign, every tip that I can get my hands on, because it's a different game. And so this is an interesting time, Taylor. He gets to write the final chapter of the 2022 season, while also possibly setting the tone for 2023, when Texas will have a young but talented quarterback room that will include Arch Manning and a healthy Malik Murphy. So lots of interesting stuff going on. And we've talked about the Texas defense and just how incredible their resurgence has been this season, playing, really, really excellent football as the season closed, especially. And here you got Pete Kwiatkowski, getting to maybe close the door on this redemption season against his old team. And Alex Cook, the safety, said today in the press conference, I still remember all the calls under Pete Kwiatkowski's defense. So if he hasn't changed the signals, we're going to know what's going on. And so, it's going to be fascinating. There's a lot of interesting storylines here, but this Texas defense, Taylor, is going to have to do it again against one of the best passing quarterbacks, passing offenses, period. Michael Penix, the quarterback, leads the nation in passing yards. They're loaded at receiver. This is going to be a really excellent final test for this Texas defense.
Yeah, it really is. And you're right. You're spot on with them having to kind of answer the call once again. And but I would say one thing. I mean, DeMarvion Overshown not playing obviously changes it a little bit, but I think that Texas having the majority of their starters on defense available should play to their favor. Now, when you look at Washington, Chip, I may be kind of sneak peek preview here of one of the love it or leave it questions today, but if you look at the teams they've played, I'm not sure that they've played any defense in college football that is on the same level as Texas has been this year. And so, obviously the familiarity that the players may have with Pete Kwiatkowski could be an advantage for some of the Washington in general, honestly. But I mean, can you look at their schedule and say, "Oh yeah, they just outperformed this defense that you would put on the same level as Texas defense?"
Well, I will say that Oregon game at Oregon, where they came from behind to win it 37-34, I would put that game on par with Texas going to K-State and doing what they did. Oregon is a top 15 team at their stadium, at Outson Stadium. I thought Michael Penix was really good in that game. I thought that was a wow game for me. And they beat Oregon State, the number 14 team in the country. Those are the two games, obviously, that you circle and say, okay, and it's part of the 6-game winning streak to end the year. But they had clunkers early. I mean, losing to 3-9 Arizona State early in the season. Arizona State fired their coach, but they did finish the season well. And those Oregon games came in November, and that's when you need to be playing your best football. So this is a confident Washington team. I think they're legit, especially on offense.
Okay, I'm curious because yeah, I mean, honestly, I'll just be fully transparent here. I didn't watch a ton of Washington this season just because of the time difference. Honestly, a lot of times
And they
that
didn't play USC or Washington. I mean,
right.
USC or Utah.
Correct. Yeah. And I think their strength of schedule, I think right now is like around like the 80s or something, where Texas is top 15 in the country, facing Alabama, facing TCU, a college football playoff team, the Big 12 beating the Big 12 champion, Kansas State. I mean, there's a part of me, and this is kind of probably a just looking too much at stats, and I'll pull what was it, Must Champ that said stats are for losers. So I'm going to pull his quote here that that's where I'm really curious and kind of fascinated by this matchup with Washington because, of their lack of strength of schedule, I guess you would say. I mean, that may be, sounding rude, and I'm not trying to. That's where I'm kind of like, how legit is this Washington team? I really would like to know. And Michael
Well,
Penix, I mean, give him credit where credit's due. He was a Heisman, one of the top 10 in the votes for Heisman. I think, what was he last? I think
he finished just ahead of Bijan.
oh, that's
He
right.
was
Did
at
he?
number
Yeah.
8. Bijan was number 9.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. So, but still, yeah, I mean, obviously Heisman voters saw something in him too. So it's going to be a really good test, I think, for the Texas defense. And I think there'll be a good challenge for Pete Kwiatkowski too. I mean, he had his redemption season this year after that first year, and he's got to continue it because we know better than anyone that Texas doesn't like to hold on to defensive coordinators very long if they have, negative seasons. So it's going to be really fascinating, though.
Well, I think it's interesting that Michael Penix, the quarterback he looks up to is Teddy Bridgewater.
Mhm.
Teddy Bridgewater, who I've said got Charlie Strong the Texas head coaching job because all of Strong's best seasons at Louisville included Teddy Bridgewater. And after that, Charlie never had a quarterback like Teddy Bridgewater again. I think Teddy Bridgewater's a winner, and that's what I think Michael Penix is. And so I think fans, there's your comp, if you will, um, for for Michael Penix. So this Texas defense, the ability to collapse the pocket, the big boys are playing. Keandre Coburn, Moro, Jomo, uh, you know, Byron Murphy, Vernon Broughton, Alfred Collins. And again, 15 bowl practices. You can make a lot of progress in that time frame. Let's see what this group looks like, and let's see what the young guys like Mo Blackwell, David Benda, what and David Benda's not a young guy, but he's going to get a chance to fill in for DeMarvion Overshone, and Mo Blackwell is clearly a guy that this coaching staff is very high on. Teammates talk about his intensity, his want to, and we've seen that from Mo Blackwell and in the limited time that we've seen him on the field. So he's definitely a name to keep an eye on as this game gets going. And Taylor, we did have just a weird moment today in the press conference when Xavier Worthy was asked, are you going to be a Longhorn in 2023? And he said, I'm just focused on this game. And I was told after, that's Worthy being worthy. It was weird. It just, I don't know what's going on, but it I was like, okay, you're a sophomore, so are you telling everyone, that your teammates and everyone in Longhorn Nation, that your decision is whether to stay at Texas or go somewhere else after all the weirdness with his Instagram account, wiping it of Texas stuff, putting the Texas stuff back on. Now he's changed his number from number 8 to number 1 because Hudson Card used to wear number 1 and Worthy wore number 1 in high school. He's been waiting patiently for it to maybe become available. As soon as it did, he said he went to Sarkisian, said he wanted to be number 1. So he's going to be number 1 in this game now, Taylor. What did you make of it?
I mean, I don't know. It's a. I'll just say it. Like, this is a different game that we are dealing with like, NIL and that type of stuff, and that impacting a lot of these players' decision if they stay at a school or transfer, and also the transfer portal as well, like kind of being there in an option without any type of penalty. So it's still kind of a new thing for me when I hear these type of things, because you're right, when we're saying this, like, it's not like he's talking about entering the NFL. He literally cannot. So he's literally talking about whether he's going to stay or go at Texas. And it's a new thing. It's sometimes can be a little bit of a shock when you hear that, because it's so new for us, even covering, college football. And I can't imagine for you, covering it for almost 30 years now. I think it is now that you've covered college football. I mean, in Texas football, I mean, it's just a unique situation. I will say, he I don't know how, because I don't want to like knock the questions. I feel like the question probably needed to be asked. Um, However, I don't know what people were expecting, because he's been kind of mum, and so I don't know. I don't really know how I feel, honestly, about the whole situation. I feel like, if money is the driver of all things for a guy like Xavier Worthy, and and that's me speculating, if that is what is leading to him potentially weighing his options, then Sark said it himself, at the regular season, after the regular season in his press conference, like, if you're only coming to a school for money, then you're not at the right school, because that's not how Sark wants to lead the program. It's not what even their recruiting pitch, to recruits. It's not. Sark says it's one of the last things they talk about. Honestly, it's not something that drives their recruiting conversations with some of the top recruits in college football. So, if what he is saying is in all actuality the way that they do approach this, and if Worthy is considering this to try to get more money elsewhere, then is he the right type of player to have there? And I'm not saying that he should do that. I'm not saying that that's what he's thinking. I mean, we just don't know, because we get those mum responses. And um, I do think, though, the other thing is with him changing his number is probably kind of a way to cater to him a little bit right now after it became available. And I did ask him, actually, in the breakout interview session that we had with the players today. I was like, I was like, or somebody asked about him changing his number, and he's like, yeah, so I feel kind of like back to myself, and I was like, you any faster in one? He's like, I feel like I am. I feel like I'm faster. And so, hey, if that's the case, then that's good. Or maybe it'll pay out. But I don't know. It's just such a weird situationship just to
Well,
kind
I
of
think
cover
you're
it,
right
right?
about the NIL stuff. I mean, look, if you've produced like Xavier Worthy and you already have sort of a pro mindset, which he does, he wants to win.
Hmm.
He wants to win and he wants his talents to be featured on a winning team. I think he feels like he didn't have that this season, whether it's because Quinn Ewers is learning on the job and they didn't connect enough or whatever. This is stuff only, Steve Sarkisian and Brennan Marion know. But in talking to people close to Xavier Worthy, and I wrote about this in the Insider a couple of weeks ago, this is a guy who gets to practice 30 minutes early. He's the first one to practice because he does all kinds of his own warm up before he even starts with practice. This guy treats it like a pro. And I think his response today was exactly what you said, that it was, listen, man, I'm moment to moment. There are a ton of people who want me. I just sent out another signal for a new round of whatever you've got, bring it to the table, and then we'll see. This is very much a business minded guy. And this is, you're right, it's a new era. It's NIL. There are those out there, agents, who say every good player, every really good player on every team should get in the portal at the end of that year and see what they can get
Mm.
because it's wide open right now. The market, you're never going to be more valuable than, after a big season. And um, so yeah, I can see it. And this is the world we're in. And whether we like it as fans or those who've covered the sport forever, this is the new world. Steve Sarkisian always talks about how, his dinosaurs and how the dinosaurs aren't here anymore because they couldn't adapt,
Mhm.
and we need to adapt, otherwise we're going to be like dinosaurs and disappear. So um all right, Taylor, interesting stuff. I do feel like the Texas Longhorns defense has a lot of confidence. Jade Barron had a good conversation with him, wrote about it in the Morning Brew. Love that kid's confidence and swag. He is the unquestioned top trash talker on the team. I thought it was interesting. Jade told me that Roshan Johnson was a close second. And I'm like, Ro? He's like, oh, yeah, y'all think he's so nice and everything. That dude is nonstop talk on the field. He and I would go at it every day in practice. And apparently, Jade Barron and Jordan Whittington do a wrap off wherever they go, whenever, when you least expect it. They'll just start freestyling and go at each other. And apparently, it's some of the best entertainment the Longhorns have had while going to SeaWorld and whatnot here in San Antonio. So you learn. It's great to come to these bowl games because you finally get them away from they're being run by a different media
From Texas Media Relations, just say it. Just
director.
say
So there's a little more chance to actually talk to the guys and get to know them a little bit. But um, yeah, we learned Keandre Coburn's going to have a baby daughter
Yeah.
in the new year and all kinds of stuff. So it's been an interesting, active lead up to this Alamo Bowl Thursday night. And I'm not kidding, Taylor. There are some of these bowl games where you're kind of rolling your eyes. I think both of these teams are seen as teams that are headed in the right direction. You don't always get that in bowl games, but both of these teams come in after a win. They're Texas is recruiting like crazy. Washington's been resurgent with Michael Penix, who says he's coming back for another year, a sixth year of college football with his COVID redshirt. And so I do think that you're going to get two motivated teams in this game, which should make it an interesting, fun game to watch for fans.
Yeah, and also the ties, I think, between these two schools. I mean, Pete Kwiatkowski was just coaching at Washington a few years ago, Steve Sarkisian's first head coaching job was at Washington. I mean, there's so many different kind of storylines and different ties between these two programs that you wouldn't think. It's not that you think like Texas and Washington; those are two schools that are really close. You know what I mean?
Well,
It's just it's a very unique one.
and Steve Sarkisian has totally changed in terms of his like laid backness. All the reporters who covered him at Washington are like, "Oh yeah, we talk to Sark all the time. We got to talk to the coordinators twice a week."
Yeah,
Um, of
we've
course, we
talked to
don't
them
get.
twice,
We've
three
talked to him
times, three times. Sorry,
twice,
three
right now,
times.
3 times. Usually, it's only in August, but that's why we like coming to the Alamo Bowl because the Alamo Bowl asks for the coordinators, and so we got to talk to Pete Kwiatkowski and Kyle Flood for
Yeah,
the third time in 2 years, and it's nice to talk to them because they're smart veteran guys. I really don't think they're going to say something out of school or out of turn if they were allowed to speak during the
yeah,
season. And it would be nice to have them answer the questions about why a offensive or defensive game plan was outstanding or subpar instead of these uh, you know 19, 18, 19, 20-year-old kids who are just running the plays that are being called. But I
yeah.
digress. Yes, it has been fun to talk to the Washington reporters who knew Sarkisian when he was a first time head coach at the age of 33, and then obviously life got in the way for Steve Sarkisian. He's a different guy now. He's probably more guarded, and thus I always say he's a little more Saban than he is Pete Carroll these days. But this is a real opportunity, Taylor. Texas has a 4-game bowl winning streak thanks to Tom Herman.
Mhm.
And he always had his teams ready to go, even when you didn't think they might be ready to go. Like after he fires his defensive staff and has, the assistants or defensive coordinator and has his assistants coordinating a successful bowl win over Utah. And then, of course, in 2020, they stomped on a bad Colorado team. But this is a 4-game bowl winning streak. And we know the importance of momentum going into the offseason. And Texas has been good at maintaining the momentum. We just had signing day. It was another big hoorah celebration. Now you need that momentum going in to 2023 when you should be in a position to contend for your what we hope is the last time that they'll be playing in the Big 12.
Yeah, and the one thing that you do also have to consider, I know that that's how a lot of fans expect, like 3 years you should start, if you're at a place like Texas recruiting as well as Steve Sarkisian and the staff are recruiting, they should be able to, kind of continue it. Texas will lose a lot on defense though this next year, and they will have to replace a lot of experience on that defense. And it's at pretty much every single position, defensive front, defensive line, linebacker, secondary, everything. So there's going to be some holes and some gaps, I would say, on the too deep for Texas that are going to be questions going into the offseason. But offensively, and I will say also offensively, you lose in my opinion, the best. Well, not even just my opinion. He won the freaking Doak Walker Award, so he is named the best running back in college football. In Bijan Robinson and Roshan Johnson, who is really just a Swiss Army knife for the Texas offense. Both of these guys, honestly. So there's definitely some key playmakers that they have to replace. But I do think that you're right in saying that Steve Sarkisian, and same with the Washington program, it seems like they're trending in the right direction, and that's all you can hope for. I think if you're a Texas fan, I mean, to come off of a 5-7 season, then the staff ends up, signing that 2022 signing class, really crushing it in the transfer portal with the additions of guys like, Quinn Ewers, Ryan Watts. I mean, Isaiah Nayer, we haven't even seen yet because he injured himself the first or second week of fall camp. I mean, they did such a good job, and now you're seeing some of the results on the field. You hope to continue to see that. I think the biggest thing that Texas does have working to its advantage moving forward, Chip, is the offensive line. I mean, and I didn't think we would be able to say that at this point right now. I haven't said that much in my career about the offensive line potentially becoming a strength for Texas football because it's just been in such kind of a downward spiral, it seems like, for the last decade plus. But, hearing just talking to Kyle Flood on Tuesday And, I asked him in our breakout interview sessions, I was like, have you ever had to rely on true freshmen, let alone rely on them and then play up to a standard that you would think is good? And he was like, no. He's like, never, ever in my career have I ever had to do that. He also talked about how he had never signed 7 offensive linemen before in the class, which they had to do in 2022. These guys are all progressing. He was talking up Cam Williams and DJ Campbell a lot. Cam Williams' athleticism and how he is just a guy that you know, he's probably progressing more than anybody else is seeing right now because they're seeing it in practice because he hasn't really been on the field like Kelvin Banks or like Cole Hudson. But I think the trajectory of the offensive line under Kyle Flood is really what is going to kind of catapult Texas going into year 3 under Steve Sarkisian, because I think that you can't say enough about these guys and the experience they've gained as true freshmen and playing up to the level and the standard that they've played at. I mean, I would have, if you had told me this before the season, I would have been like, well, Texas probably playing for a Big 12 title then, soon if I knew that. And because it's such a hard position to go from being from high school to the college game. And I really think that that's probably the biggest strength that Texas has going into the future, and that these guys are a year older too in the same system.
Yeah. Yeah. The defense got it right this season, and there's enough experience carrying over that you're right. They are going to have some holes to replace, but they do have some experience at the positions where they're losing people, and you bring in an Anthony Hill, a Derek Williams at safety, Malik Muhammad at corner, on top of all the talented corners that they have with Terrence Brooks, Jalen Gilbo, Xavion Bryce, Austin Jordan. And I've said it, and I'll say it again, one of the best recruiting jobs Sarkisian and this staff did was holding on to all those young, talented players and not seeing those kids get in the portal and get lured somewhere else. So kudos to this Texas staff for really, obviously they would have loved to hold on to Hudson Card, who's now announced he's going to Purdue. But he, Hudson Card, they knew that was coming. So outside of losing Hudson Card, you really didn't lose a guy who figures prominently in the 2 deep moving forward. So that's a vote for the Sarkisian culture, and this bowl game will be another reflection of the Sarkisian culture and Steve Sarkisian calling a game that we've seen him just dissect teams, and we've seen him get away from maybe what was working a time or two this season, where he now looks back. So again, with 15 bowl practices, I know there was a lot of recruiting and a lot of signing day in there. The first week of bowl practices, Sark wasn't even really around. It was GAs running it. But certainly the second half of bowl practices that, Sark's been there, and they've been game planning for this. So I'm excited. I'm ready. Taylor, you ready for some love it or leave it?
I am. Real quick, though, I want to say this. I thought this was really interesting that Pete Kwiatkowski talked about when he was asked about Jalen Ford and, his kind of his breakout, kind of season that I think a lot of people were not expecting. And I think a guy that has not gotten a lot of the credit where credit is due for some of the defensive players and some of the players in general, but mainly on the defense side of the ball that have stepped up, is Torrey Becton and the strength staff. I think that, Pete Kwiatkowski made it a point to talk about that the amount of work that Jalen Ford has put in with the strength staff and a lot of the defensive players have done, they don't get the credit. And that was the one thing I just think is important for some Texas fans to hear, because, I remember last year when the games were breaking down in the second half, a lot of the members of Horns 24/7's complaints a lot were on what's wrong with our strength staff. And really, these guys have done a really, really elite job, I would say, in year 2. After, kind of having to train the guys in year 1, which Steve Sarkisian has talked about in the offseason and, leading into the season this year. But I thought that was important to acknowledge, Chip, because I think that those guys are kind of in a sense, a little bit of the unsung heroes on the staff that never really get any type of credit or acknowledgement. So that was something that really stood out when I heard Pete Kwiatkowski say that.
Yeah, it's a good point. And Torrey Becton, deserves credit. That guy is as much a mind shaper as he is a body changer. So
Yeah.
you got to have that. It's a big reason why I think TCU did so well this year. Their strength coach, Kaz Kamadi, is outstanding. And, he was at Baylor under Art Briles when they were winning Big 12 championships. And he is a big time, mind shaper in addition to body changer. So you got to have that. All right, Taylor, you ready for some love it or leave it?
I am. Before we get to love it or leave it, we're going to take a really quick break, but stay tuned because we have plenty more Alamo Bowl preview coming up. We'll be right back. And if you're watching us on the Horns 24/7 YouTube channel, we will continue on here. Chip, I'm going to throw you my first love it or leave it. You ready?
I'm ready.
Love it or leave it. Texas not having Bijan Robinson and Roschon Johnson will severely impact the offense's production.
I'm going to leave this because it shouldn't. I know that sounds a little crazy, but I'm a big buyer of Jonathan Brooks. I think he's a special talent, and I think he can handle it. And I think with Steve Sarkisian's creativity and all these weapons that he can get into space, Xavier Worthy, Keelan Robinson, we've seen it. I think this offense should be able to move the football against Washington's defense. Washington doesn't play a 3-high safety look where they're going to drop, they're going to rush 3 and drop 8 and disguise everything on the defense. I think they're a little more straightforward. I think Quinn Ewers is going to be able to see the field. I just hope they continue to run the football with Jonathan Brooks and not just turn it into a throw-a-thon, because we've pointed out when Texas has attempted 34 passes this season, they've lost those games. 3 games against Alabama, against Oklahoma State, and against TCU. So Texas is good enough. The offensive line is good enough. Run the ball, do what you do, and play action, but don't feel the need to throw it all the way down the field. As much as we know Sarkisian loves those deep shots. But Taylor, I know that sounds preposterous. There's no one who can replace Bijan Robinson, but I don't think the offensive production should, be severely impacted.
Yeah.
How about you?
Yeah, I would say not severely. I think that, as you said, like, you can't replace Bijan Robinson and honestly Roschon Johnson. I mean, those are 2 guys that are very special. I mean, we've said all season long, I feel like that Texas had arguably, if not arguably, the best 1-2 punch in college football between those 2 when it comes to the running game. And then their ability to also be, consistent options in the passing game too. And so, but I do think, that with every game, I feel like is help the offense with the offensive line kind of like, continuing to get more experience and all of that. It starts up front. And I think that there's not really any reason to be concerned about that. And I think more so than anything, I mean, we kind of saw a little snippet of what Jonathan Brooks can do when Texas played Kansas. I mean, and I will say Kyle Flood did make this comment. He's like, I'm pretty sure that, and I'll have to check this, but he said that he was pretty sure that the longest run of the season was by Jonathan Brooks. And I think it was in that Kansas game. So, I think it's the offense's production is going to probably be somewhat impacted. I wouldn't say severely, solely because of, I think that the offensive line is going to help open up the holes in the run game, and they'd done that a lot. It wasn't like all of Bijan's carries were things that he was creating out of nowhere. It was he was getting help from the up front. So I'm going to agree with you. I'm going to leave it. But I do think it will be impacted some. Just I'm not sure severely would be the word I would use.
I just realized I'm like really glistening with these bright lights above my head here. Sorry,
those halogen little
I'm not
or whatever they
sweating.
are.
I'm just glistening. All right,
Hey,
love it or leave it.
it's a natural, like, angel halo, apparently,
Yes,
against
it's
yeah, there
my
you go.
angelic glow.
I know, I'm, like, in, like, a cave in my hotel room with, like, no lights on, it's like the devil and the angel over
Yeah. All right,
there.
love it or leave it. Number 2 on this heaven or hell version of love it or leave it.
Love it or leave it. Xavier Worthy being mum about his future with Texas is a major concern entering the offseason.
I I think this has already been solved unless Worthy's going back to the well a second time, which hey, it's NIL baby, get what you can get. Um, but I'm going to leave this because I talked to Xavier about his level of excitement playing with Isaiah Nayer next year. He's a big fan of Jonte Cook, who he helped recruit here, and Ryan Niblett. He's trying to get Jordan Whittington to stick around. So I'm gonna leave this. Taylor, how about you?
Yeah, I'm gonna leave it too. I think that again, like the question I feel like kind of had to be asked a little bit. Um, but I think that the behind the scenes stuff that maybe not everybody hears are things that, make me a little bit more confident. And who knows, we could be dead wrong. I don't know. I feel like with him and Jordan Whittington, it could change any day, any day of the week. It could change right now. Um, but, when there was a lot of rumors when he removed all of the Texas stuff from his social media, I had heard from sources that that same day he had bought the whole team shoes and was taking some of the offensive linemen like out to dinner that night and stuff. So I really think there's definitely speculation, and again, in this new era of college football that everybody's kind of trying to get used to, including people like Chip and me that have covered college football for at least 10 years. I'm the young one, so I am the decade mark. Chip's at like the 3 decade mark, but
Yes.
sorry, I had to throw that one in. But no, I think it's just we're kind of learning on the fly too on how this stuff works a little bit, and so I never am going to sit here and say 100% this is going to happen just because you never know. But I do think that this is probably not as big of a concern as it looks in hearing and reading the comments in the transcript that he, what he had to say about that. So I'm going to also agree. I'm going to leave this, and I don't think it's a major concern right now. And who knows, tomorrow we may have a different answer. I don't know. You just never know.
Oh
And
yeah.
I feel like with Worthy and Whittington, it's kind of been that way where it could change any day.
Yeah. And we're still waiting to hear about Jalen Ford as well. That would be
Mhm.
a monster blow after the season he had. He should have won the Big 12 Defensive Player of the Year. All right, Taylor, love it or leave it, number 3.
All right, final one. Love it or leave it. Washington's record is more of a reflection on the lack of strength of schedule than it is for how elite this team is.
I'm going to leave this because of what I said earlier. I feel like the wins over Oregon State and at Oregon in November were statement wins for this Washington team, especially having to come back from down a touchdown in the final 3 minutes of the game at Oregon, a team that got better after they got thrashed by Georgia to begin the season. And Michael Penix showed me, we're still waiting to see this from Quinn Ewers. You're judged by your ability to lead your team from behind late in a game in hostile territory. We saw it over and over again with Vince Young and Colt McCoy. And heck, Casey Thompson led Texas back from 21 down against Kansas last year to get into overtime. And that's the sign of a quarterback that grabs your attention and says, okay, we got to watch this guy. Well, Michael Penix is a guy who his team believes in. They play for this guy. And they are super confident at the quarterback position. They've been compared to Texas Tech and UTSA. I think they're UTSA is probably the better comparison from, Frank Wilson, veteran guy, knows exactly what he's looking for, has good weapons around him. And people may say, Frank Wilson, we beat them. We beat UTSA. Remember, that was a one-score game until Jahdae Barron scored that pick six. So in the third quarter, I'm just saying, I think Michael Penix is better than Frank Wilson, and I think his weapons are better. When you talk about Roma Dunze and Jalen McMillan and Taj, Taj. This is the guy everyone keeps saying you gotta keep your eye on because Taj Davis. Taj Davis had the big touchdown against Oregon late in that game. So, long story longer, Taylor. I'm going to leave this. How about you?
I don't know. A part of me wants to love it, honestly. And what you're saying about Michael Penix and you using it as a comparison against Quinn Ewers, you're talking about a guy that's going into he's going to have a 6th year compared to a first-time starter at quarterback. So it's, in my opinion, it's hard for me to put them even in the same category with Quinn Ewers and him solely because Quinn Ewers is still
but that makes Washington scary. That's the question, right?
Yeah, but I mean, Texas played some pretty elite quarterbacks this year, and the defense held up really well. Bryce Young, at the time, the reigning Heisman Trophy winner, and Texas held Alabama to 20 points. So I think I'm going to just, I don't know. Because I feel like this, if I love this, I feel like it's going to be something that's going to bite me in the, what, one day. But I'll love it. I'm going to disagree with you on one of these. I'm going to love it. I'm going to say that, this is more, I don't know. I feel like I might eat my words if I say this. So I'll just say I love it. I'm not gonna elaborate much more because I don't want to have to answer for it later. But just to disagree, no, I do think that Texas has played far better competition than Washington has played. The proof of the pudding's in the eating. And if you look at the records of the wins that Washington has had, there are very few wins over those two. Oregon State, Oregon are two of, I believe, 3 wins over teams that had a above 500 record. So for that, I'm going to say that the lack of strength of schedule is probably something to pay attention to. But I don't want to say that Washington's not an elite team either. That's where I'm struggling with this one because it's I'm kind of in the middle where I do think that maybe the lack of strength schedule is why they have the record that they do. But I don't also want to say that they're not an elite team because I do think they are. Winning 10 games is not easy in the Power 5 conference, and they've won 10 games. So they also didn't play the top 2 teams in their conference either, though. So.
Well, it's going to be fun, folks. I think that tells you everything you need to know, that there's enough intrigue about this game Thursday night that we are actually going to learn some stuff about how much Texas has made out of its 15 bowl practices. Where's Quinn Ewers in terms of his development, and a look at some of the players who will be counted on next year because of the absences of guys like Bijan Robinson, Roschon Johnson, and DeMarvion Overshown. So it'll be fun, and we will be on with you right after the game to talk about it. So make sure that you tune right back in to Horns 24/7, the YouTube channel, of course, horns247.com. Feel free to leave us a 5-star rating wherever you listen to your podcasts. Our bosses really appreciate that, and we will get on these airwaves and talk about the game Thursday night, no matter how late it is.
It'll be late.
Ready for that, Taylor? You in?
I'm in. Yeah. I think we have to be, right? The game starts at 8:00, so it's going to be a late night.
Oh,
but
it's going to be late. It's going to be late.
Yeah.
But we'll be there for you. And so everyone, I hope you have a great finish to the holiday season here. And for Taylor Estes, I am Chip Brown. Until next time, we'll see you over at horns247.com. Stay safe and keep the faith.